It is a brand new year. Good evening and welcome to the very first edition of the Citizens Chat on Civic Space TV. I am Phillip Muliisa. Today, the chat is going to be guided by the presidential end of year address to the nation, and we want to look at the details of what he promised the country, what he said failed in the previous year, and the government looks forward to make sure is corrected in the new year. Now, helping us understand all that is a panel of distinguished Ugandans, but also Africans by extension, whom I will introduce. From my extreme left, from the National Resistance Movement, the Director External Affairs, retired Major Counsel Awich Pollar. Major, you're most welcome to the show and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Phillips. Happy New Year too, and Happy New Year to our viewers.
Thank you. Next to the Major is from Uganda's People's Congress, the Honorable Joseph Ochieno. Honorable, you're most welcome to the show and Happy New Year.
Uganda's Congress. Happy New Year to everybody.
Thank you. And next to him is from Kyambogo University, Dr. Robert Ojambo. Doctor, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Philip. Happy New Year, viewers. I wish you a nice show.
Thank you so much. And last but not least is Dr. Sarah Bireete from the Center for Constitutional Governance. Doctor, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, and Happy New Year, our dear viewers.
Thank you. Now, I want to start with Major Awich. You is closer to the president than many of the people here, I understand.
For sure.
When the president is making such communications to the country, you at the NRM, the Secretariat, he is implementing the manifesto of the National Resistance Movement. Does he consult the Secretariat in making these, or the people that make his speech and himself? Does he consult you people, and are these the views you endorse as a party?
Thank you, viewers. True, I'm close. By work procedures, we keep ourselves close. For example, on Friday, the day the president made the speech, I met him in State House in Entebbe, and he said, we can't discuss, we meet on Sunday. So we met on Sunday, some few hours before he went to Rachtura, and I drove to the north. So you can see within the 2 days, I met him twice. So, but this is work related, and therefore, I admit we are close. Now, about speech writing, or before that, about the end of year speech. The end of year speech, to the best of my knowledge, is not a speech provided for under the law. Sarah may guide me. Of course, a good lawyer is not the one who knows all the laws, but where to find it. So if I've not found it and Sarah has, it's okay. Unlike the state of address, State of the Nation address. The State of the Nation address is an address demanded by law, that at this time the president should address the country on the State of the Nation. And that's why it is called the State of Nation address. That one is a demand of the law. But end of year address, to me, is discretional from the president, from the fountain of honor, and he has to say bye-bye to the country for the end of year and wishing new year. Therefore, this now takes us to whether or not he consults, and even if whether that consultation is obligatory or discretional. As the chairman of the party, he has a discretion to ask anybody. If he tells the Secretary General, I want this information, that we often do, write me a page on this or that, or a brief, or from his aides. He asks from his aides, I want a brief on this. So he does it, and that is discretional, and he does it. So in brief, therefore, about whether or not he consults, he does consult, but I am saying he consults is not as a demand of the law that should he fail to consult, then he would be in default, or he would be in non-compliance of the law. But he does a lot, and he's a very consultative man. He consults a lot. He accepts views. He gets brief, and he does it as and when he wants. And he reads a lot. he is a serious reader. Not only on the brief, but even academic textbooks. So that is it.
Thank you so much, Major. Now, Honorable Joseph Ochieno, I started with one who is closest to the president.
Now to the farthest.
Now to the farthest.
That is again debatable. The Congress are close to us.
In Jesus' name, I am actually the farthest to Mr. Museveni. and may that divide continue this year and forever. But farthest in peace, because the Bwana Jesus doesn't want us to have any issue. But anyway, sorry.
Yes, my question to you is, when you listen to the president, the things he spoke about, industrialization, the promotion of services, talk about ICT, commercial agriculture, and improving security, does this bring you any closer to the president now? Did he promise what you wanted him to promise?
No, in fact, Mr. Museveni's speech that I only read reluctantly when it became apparent that he invited me to this show is actually extremely repugnant. It's repugnant because it's very patronizing. It's repugnant because it's very repetitive. It's repugnant because it's very cheeky. It's repugnant because it's extremely irresponsible, doesn't have the tone of the president. It's repugnant because actually, in fact, for somebody who's been in power for 38 years this coming week, and for somebody who was a minister at the helm of helm of government for 2 years before going to terrorize people in the bushes, and for somebody who has been generally an organized person, somebody who graduated in 1972 and had more than 10, 15 years of experience before becoming a ruler, you'd expect him to do better. Just 2 days ago, I was having, as I normally do, a group of young people, giving them guidance how to make speeches, how to make speeches, write reports, maybe write letters, things to do with basic courtesy, something that I do from time to time. It shouldn't. You realize that from that speech, Mr. Museveni, on the one hand, he says I, when it's convenient for him. Actually, for a nation, when he's actually addressing some of the core things, I'm teaching him. He should actually be saying we, as a government, we as possibly NRM. So we normally pushes we when he wants to emphasize something to do with NRM, the military element. But that said, I agree with the Comrade Awich that it's not necessarily obligatory speech, but that's not why we're here. He rules our country. So as a head of state, we expect him to issue a statement, and that statement, even if it's 2 lines, particularly you guys in the media, will be following. What does he say end of year? What's the end of year message? What is the Christmas message? Maybe an incident has happened. And the global media around the world. And that's what responsible leaders do, particularly elected leaders for him, of course, is there, rather in one way or another. When a major incident happens in a country, you would expect the head of state to say something. And normally the media will try and chase maybe 1, 2, 3 days in normal democracies, if maybe the head of state has not issued a statement. So as a parent of the state, is expected for him to say something. So what is it? To the extent that Mr. Museveni talks about, and where the headlines here, talks about promoting wealth creation in every home. And the way he talks it, he basically literally blames all Ugandans who've not acquired wealth. Poor Ugandans, all your fault. How comes you don't know that you need to have as many cattle as I have in Kisozi? Which Kisozi farm? We need to look for how Kisozi was initially acquired by Mr. Museveni and his darling Janet.
It was grabbed.
There's a public land. So Museveni talks as if everybody else can own Kisozi. I mean, I am much more resourced, and I've said it publicly, that I grew much more privileged in background than Mr. Museveni, officially as a family. But we don't have land in Nagongera. So I actually can't do half of what Mr. Museveni is talking about trying to tell Ugandans. As a head of state, if he was issuing the statement within the first year of his administration, maybe 2, 3 years, yes. But after completing one term, remember 5-year term, the expectation is that your program as a government should have been from delivering them to implementing half of them, unless it's again maybe a 10-year program that you can say that, well, this we shall be seeing the fruits in 10 years. But after 38 years, and you're blaming citizens for being poor, I think it's extraordinary. What else does Mr. Comrade Awich president say? Combating corruption. That was actually one of the funniest things. You corrupt people, I'll see you down the corner. Mr. Museveni is writing as if he's just under some tree by the mango tree and is just chatting with children down the street. You know, corruption has corroded this country. And corruption corroding this country directly linked to his office. And for him to be telling us at the end or beginning of year that he knows the people who are corrupt, he knows the few people, as would suggest, who are doing these things, and has not done anything to them, and so he's promising to be dealing with them this coming year. One or two of my colleagues, possibly the panel, might say, you know, with the Mabati thieves and many of those other people, and has done absolutely nothing. So what is he waiting to do? So how can that be a message for me for New Year? It's an insult to the citizens of this country, embracing regional integration. And you know, there maybe that's what my brother Comrade Awich advised him on, since he heads foreign relations in foreign policy at NRM Secretariat, and then this question of terrorism. The question of terrorism, as I said, last year was the year when NRA's security thing died. The year that NRA was totally exposed. The ticket, law and order ticket, which political parties, particularly political parties to the right of politics, would normally say that they are tough on law and order. They fundamentally failed. Now, the big thing that most Ugandans always thought that, well, is Mr. Museveni who knows the army, he controls the army, has got the army, you can't do anything without him. What happened in that school in Western Uganda, and some of the terror incidents and events that have taken place here, and my brother Robert and I have previously chatted, about some of these other things, including some of these incidents of terror, and then you wonder, are they real terror or are they really staged operations? No, NRA has been exposed as not even being able to guarantee security of the property and of the citizens. Now, on the thing in Congo, to say that we're pursuing them and they're coming to another finish, when are they going to be finished? We went to Congo, allegedly in 1997, to finish these people. We've not finished them. Link that to, for final bit of this. In his speeches, and when he's talking about some of these other things about Congo and Somalia, he instructs, let's talk to, let the Congolese talk to M23. The other day I was with an NRA person who presented himself as a researcher, but actually an NRA propagandist, claiming that in Congo part of the problem was talking part of his regional security element, sort of going on and on, is that the Congolese authorities have failed to address the concerns of the ADF. And I asked him, the Congolese authorities have failed to address the concerns of the ADF. Mr. Museveni refers sometimes, have we addressed the concerns of, sorry, not ADF, M23, I beg your pardon, concerns of M23. Have we addressed the concerns of ADF? ADF? So we cannot say as a country, Mr. Museveni cannot say as a country, you Congolese, you must deal with the armed groups in a round table. And in Uganda, you say we're going to finish them. And the way the guy talks about finishing them, he thinks these people in ADF are equipment and animals. So it's a shocking thing, but because it's a new year, my hope is that that beyond this week, and that as he celebrates his first day of first week of the new year, is able to be a review. But it's one of the most disappointing speeches ever.
Dr. Ojambo, Honorable Joseph Ochieno here seems not to appreciate anything in the president's speech, and I understand he's a politician from the opposite side. You, who is not a politician, what did you appreciate from the president's speech?
Yeah, before I do that, I just want to put things in perspective. When does President Museveni speak? Mm-hmm. President Museveni normally speaks, as the Major said, on the State of Nation address. That one is a must, because he must highlight things that have been in the parliament during that year, because it's normally during when the parliament is moving, ending its year, and also talking about the budget and how the economy has been and all sorts of things. Number two, President Museveni normally gives another speech when there is crisis. when there is a crisis in the country. For example, there is an outbreak of a disease, there is a rebel outfit somewhere, or is angry with certain people. The most angry speech I saw President Museveni in was when he was quarreling with Mengo over land in 1998, when there was this Baganda clamor for land. He was in combat. When does President Museveni speak? The third is normally when he's in ceremonies. He's in a ceremony, maybe a celebration, and those speeches are almost the same if you look at them. They normally speaks about the same things, but the only thing that will differ is the tone and the presence. Some he's in combat, some is seated taking porridge, some he doesn't even take water. Then the last one, now the recent ones, are the third form. President Museveni has enjoyed the media because he has realized that the media changes a lot of things in Uganda. So he always creates a situation to speak to the people. And for a few years, he has started giving end-of-year speeches. He used not to give them. And that is a very inconveniencing day of the every time, because all TVs are tuned to him, the radios. So some of us, sometimes we don't listen.
It's a directive.
We don't listen to him because we want to listen to other TV programs. So we go to CNN and BBC, because those are the only ones you will find there. And I find it unfair that they should force everybody in the country to listen to the president, which is, so some of us normally don't. Those are the instances when the president speaks. Now, in this speech, I think the president just wanted to speak to his Vazukulu, as he calls them, but he normally has his 4 issues. And if you check this speech, it has 4 issues. He has realized that President Museveni is like these town pastors. These pastors, that's why they're becoming very popular. It's not because the Holy Spirit has come in Uganda. They have just learned what is the problem affecting most people in Kampala. And that's what is preached. When you go now I normally go to church on very few occasions when there is a celebration or a burial. Those are the only chances I get to go to church. So I listen to these traditional churches. Traditional churches have scripts. Like, for example, the Catholic Church, every day has its reading and its preaching. From Rome to my village in Maweito, they are preaching the same thing, they are reading the same books, everything. In the born-again churches, it is according to the situation. If the people who have come there are majority rich people, they will preach about the rich man who was not giving. So President Museveni has also learned that. He wants to speak to the poor people. So what does he say? Wealth creation. He knows there are people who have lost their relatives recently because they have been killed by certain marauders whom we don't know who they are. The security system should be the only one knowing. He speaks about security. And President Museveni is like a film star. He does not contribute to any problem in Uganda. Yes. For him, he's a problem solver. So he's a film starter. In fact, when we were watching films as kids, even if you shoot a film star, all people will die. For him, he does not die. He knows the other problem right now, which is the major problem of this country, is corruption. So that one, what he does, he massages it. He massages it like, these traditional healers who say that they are bone specialists. They do nothing. They only massage the bone. They have nothing idea about the bone. I say this with authority because I was a footballer and I know how those people are dangerous. People praise them, by the way. But their work is just to massage the bone. They don't even know what is happening in the bone. They massage it. Of course, the fourth issue, which he has always talked about, but that one is normally for his political diplomacy. That is the issue of integration. And for me, I was thinking that this issue of integration, it is already stillbirth. Let's just leave it. It's a stillbirth because integration, you are integrating with Ethiopia to do what? You are integrating with the South Sudan. For what purpose? You are integrating with Somalia. If anything,
for
they should be
trade,
there.
for security.
What will you ever trade with Somalia? Somalia, even life there is just a big problem. If anything, you need to avoid yourself and leave them alone. You need to even put a barrier there like the one between Mexico and USA. So for me, I feel this speech is good. The president needs to speak to the nation. And when the president speaks to the nation, there should be, people should take home certain things and say, the president today has spoken. But if somebody sings for you lullabies every day, because the issue of corruption is not a new issue. The issue of wealth creation has been here. The issue, what new thing? The president, like for example, let me just give me a minute. Like on the issue of corruption, you are talking about the end of the year. The president should have highlighted for us the key corruption issues that have been in the country and show us how they have dealt with each one of them. Every local man knows that there were three serious corruption issues in Uganda which affected everybody. The Mabati issue in Karamoja, the issue of the hospitals, this hospital, Lubowa Hospital,
The underground.
which is official corruption in my view. A corruption which is planned for by government, passed in the budget, and even it gets even a supplementary budget. A huge corruption issue. The other one which is related has been the issue of stealing medicine. You saw that study which was carried, where they studied that in Busoga, 80% of the drugs that are sent to the hospitals are taken. And the AGG, so many organizations have done that. Those are things we wanted to see from the president's speech. He's talking about corruption. He's warning them, the corrupt people. Like my senior colleagues here said, the corrupt people, I will destroy you. Are they popcorns that you are going to just get them and destroy? So there was, in my view, and people who are close to our president, if they need some of us to take him serious, he should be speaking to issues and giving us a direction. For example, wealth creation. When you listen to
Doctor, corruption is an issue.
Yes, it is. But the way he spoke about it, it's like somebody singing for a kid who is suffering from malaria, a lullaby to sleep. Malaria, you must give a malaria treatment. You don't sing that sleep, baby, sleep. No. So we needed to see, for example, what did the government do to the Mabati thieves? I have some people I speak to. Even Kitutu has jumped bail. They were looking for her the other day. The AGG was saying she has not gone to court. They sent their people and the security men were grabbed and put her chini ya ulinzi from IGG. I saw on TV with my own eyes. So if a minister is the one failing the justice system, and this minister is involved in corruption, how do you assure me that you are going to deal with other corrupt people? If you have a minister who is just next to you, you have powers over him or her. You remember the issue of Naguruland. The issue of Naguruland, although the members of parliament vulgarized it and went into personal things, but it started with corruption. The minister who was involved in that corruption was even censured in parliament this year. And that minister was censured, but it is upon the president to relieve her of duty. Where is she? She's working and alive. So they are waiting maybe for Ojambo or any other person, and they humiliate him. So if you cannot deal with those ones where you have power, I doubt the president is singing us lullabies.
Thank you so much, Dr. Robert Ojambo there. But The two previous speakers seem to be so biased with the president. I want to bring in a more objective speak on that particular issue, who is from the civil society. And
Oh my
Dr.
God.
Sarah, you who is closer to the
We are
people
going to
of
give the other
Uganda,
side of the speech, don't worry.
please, you who is closer to the people of Uganda,
That you would.
they must have taken something from the president's speech. The president tells them we're going to create jobs, we are sending 100 million to people at the parish, we are going to wipe out ADF, we are going to clean the city, we have new conferences in the country, roads are being worked on. People should appreciate the president.
Well, you know, the president's speech, I think for me, there's an end of year speech would be an important speech,
True.
although not mandatory. But what should it be like? It should be an accountability of events that have shaped the outgoing year and the focus for the new year. The president should set a tone for the nation in the new year, but based on what has happened in the year that is ending. When you look at the president's speech, he has maintained his informality approach in governance. The president is largely informal, addresses citizens as a Bazukuru, addresses that kind of, you know, it's like he's in his backyard talking to his children and grandchildren.
Yeah.
We are citizens of this country. We have sovereign rights. He has a sovereign duty as a president. I don't even like that informality of Bazukuru and making it formal everywhere. Dear Bazukuru, you as Jaja. This is a president of the Republic of Uganda known as Yoweri Kaguta Tibuhaburwa.
Maybe he has come to appreciate that he's been here for too long, therefore he qualifies to be a judge of the nation.
Yeah, but a judge of the nation would
Speaks like a judge.
would be in the background, waiting to be consulted on a few issues where he still has memory on, where he's still capable of advising. So if he's a judge and he's still taking on the mantle of the chief executive officer of a country, isn't he misplaced? So when you look at the detail of the speech, I tuned in when he had started, and when I heard the way he was narrating on number one on household incomes, I said, okay, is this a speech or a folk song kind of thing? Because the tone was really that of storytelling, informal storytelling, like the cultural, the way the grandfathers would tell us, the historical stories. Yeah, the folk stories. Largely informal. But what stood out under that number one for me is where the president spoke as if he's a president of another country. That for you to have majority citizens in agriculture is a sign of backwardness. 80% of Ugandans are in agriculture, and he has been in power for almost 4 decades. Yes. So is he telling Ugandans that he has presided over backwardness? I think for me that is contempt of Ugandans. Agriculture is not per se a useless thing. It has stabilized our inflation because of stable food prices. Even when we have expensive fuel, our inflation is low thanks to agriculture. Because the few people who can still afford a meal, they buy it at fair prices. But we also know that the purchasing power of citizens has largely gone down. And there are few people going to the market. So, during COVID, for the first time, the president was referring to agriculture as a real economy. Because we were able to stay stable as a country because of food supply. But now he's vulgarizing agriculture that it is backwardness. How can agriculture be backwardness? We have seen developed countries giving serious subsidies and serious attention to
That's correct.
agriculture. The problem is that we have vulgarized agriculture and we don't serve it, although it has continued to serve us with enough food. And Uganda has a food basket of East Africa.
I can give you information.
Yes.
All the Scandinavian countries are rich out of agriculture.
Yes.
Holland is a dairy country, and many others are fruit countries, and they are providing dairy, including there was a time when the dairy was coming from Netherlands to Uganda.
Yes.
And that's how they have become rich.
And sometimes we see chocolate is imported, Nescafe milk. We still have-
Canada's mechanized agriculture was a subject and continues to be subject of our academic study in this country.
Yes. Agriculture in the US is big business
Yeah.
with big subsidies, with big attention. Because that is the food basket of a country. But it also provides exports. Coffee almost hit a $1 billion mark. Coffee is agriculture. It's our number one exporter. So when you have a president for 40 years, it's 38 to be exact, 38 years, you have not managed to change coffee from being the largest producer. But also coffee is still a hot cake globally. Not just, so how do you vulgarize your number one foreign exchange earner that agriculture means backwardness? What agriculture is he specifically talking about? Then the issue of a 4-acre model is really luxurious farming. How many Ugandans, amid this land grabbing that he has presided over as a president, how many Ugandans still have 4 acres
That's correct.
of land? Look at the vulgarization of land in northern Uganda under Bararo. He didn't even mention
No.
the Bararo crisis in his speech.
Yeah.
So he did not give accountability of 2023 and usher the citizenry into 2024. It was rather an informal storytelling thing that we call the presidential address. So it falls short of that standard of being presidential. When you look at the number 2 point, corruption, I think President Museveni knows that it is extremely ridiculous to address citizens without talking about corruption. But we know that there is nothing he can do about corruption. So I think for me, he could be honest for once and say that I govern this country based on corruption. Corruption is my method of keeping power, and I want to invite you citizens to fight corruption after I'm gone. Because it seems like that.
Yeah.
But you see, Doctor, when you say that the
Yes.
president has put in place the IGG's office, the State House Anti-Corruption Unit, recently the Investors Protection Unit, that is fighting corruption.
Is corruption going down or higher? And which type of corruption do we have that is going higher? Formal corruption. The president said that this lady of Rubo Underground Hospital is her person. Doesn't he steal money in every budget using the Rubo Underground Hospital?
It is underground.
Have you ever seen it? Has it come out of the ground?
There is a factory in
Have
Ambo,
you seen Rubo Hospital?
which also does not come.
Where is it?
Every year,
Underground,
The
covered
US
by
factory.
iron sheets. 3 months ago, a journalist tried to peep through the iron sheets, and he was arrested. Where is the hospital? Underground. The joke on social media was that Uganda should go in the Guinness Book of Records
The banker hospital.
for constructing an underground hospital. So it features in every
By
budget.
global coffee
Shameless,
magnet from-
isn't that
from
official
Italy.
corruption? Look at things like the money we invest in private entities, Munyonyo, Atiak Sugar, and others. Which entity has ever paid dividend to the treasury in lieu of the money we invest? Which entity? That is official corruption. Why don't we say this is free money we are giving this entity because of ABC? Make it a one-off and close the chapter. other than deceiving citizens that we are buying shares, we are buying equity in things that we do not earn any profit. Which economics is that? Why don't we say we are giving a donation or a grant to this entity?
It's
Because it employs so many
It's,
Ugandans.
it's
because
called the voodoo economics. Voodoo economics.
I agree. And I think we should move away from that kind of official corruption and hoodwinking Ugandans and say, create reasons under which a private entity can win a grant from government, can win a bailout, and create procedures. Give it as a one-off, forget about it. Because Ugandans are not about to earn anything from the money that is stolen from entities like Munyonyo, Atiak Sugar. And one day we shall know who actually owns these things. Because we know some of the people could be holding out for others in this official corruption. So that's why I think that President Museveni should be honest, because he governs through corruption. He keeps power through corruption and cannot fight corruption. Previously, he used to claim that he didn't have evidence. And then God wanted to unmask him and created the Karamoja Iron Sheet saga, which has hard lifting, stealing of hardware.
Real.
Yes, where you cannot even say that you can't quantify. The iron sheets are counted, picked through a government store, lifted by his cabinet. 23 of his ministers lifted Karamoja iron sheets, hardware evidence. Now he has nowhere to run. So why should he deceive Ugandans that he can fight corruption? He still sits every week with the same 23 ministers that store iron sheets. Wow.
So,
Major Awich.
C23, like M23, C23 headlines.
What? Corruption
Thank you.
23.
Major Awich, you sit at the NRM Secretariat, and when you listen to the three, they seem not to see any positive in the speech of the president. Perhaps you need to convince them about what the president put out on that day.
First of all, I started off by being disciplined by sticking to your question. Your question was, does he consult for the speech or not? I answered that and I put a full stop. My colleague said I stopped talking. Why would I answer beyond what you have asked? Now, if you ask that, now I come to it. For the avoidance of doubt, I have a full speech. This is the speech in issue. Only that I restrained myself going into it because of my NRM revolutionary discipline.
C discipline.
That you answer what is asked, but otherwise I have the speech. Now, before I get into the speech, let me comment about what my other colleagues have said, which I think deserves clarification. There was an issue about the president talking and having all the televisions and the radios for him. I think this is provided for under UCC, either by an act or by some regulations, that even in a district like Tororo district, which is a Comrade Congress district, is that the FM stations in Tororo weekly has a provision for the RDC to address people. So it is the RDC who chooses not to utilize that time. In other words, in the wisdom of government is that we have the media for entertainment, for information, for this, but there's a provision for developmental aspect that is given to government. And it is that provision that at national level, the president exhausts. Even in a district is there, even in Tororo. As you can even ring here.
I doubt that there is a provision in the law
It's
that
not
when
the
the
law.
president
I
is speaking,
said it is
all
under
media
regulations.
organizations
It is
should
under
be switched to his
UCC.
speech.
I said
not
all
there.
regulations, but there's a provision there for either administrative or otherwise by Uganda Communication Commission to the effect that government is granted some airtime for development. Even on FM stations in Arua, the RDC has airtime embedded in it. He can choose either to utilize it or not. So, in the same spirit for development, it is where the president gets the chance to take this opportunity to air views, because it is presumed the president and the fountain of honor is talking to Ugandans about matters that affect them. So I like to put that clarification that it is in the best interest of Uganda that the president once in a while addresses people in all media. And if RDC has, like in Lira, for example, we have 8 radio stations. The RDC Lira has airtime in all the 8 radio stations. What are you doubting? Ring any RDC and ask, or any radio station owner. So I like to break that clear. The other thing is it wrong to identify your audience and speak about them? Because Doctor seems to think that by Museveni identifying audience being the poor, audience being victims of terror, audience being this, and you speak to them, it's wrong. To me, the opposite is wrong. If you know your audience and you come as President Museveni and you know that the people are poor and you know that the people are victims of terror, and you start talking about electromagnetic wave and rockets, and then who are you? So it is right and fitting that the president identifies the audience and addresses the audience in specific terms. I do not think it is counterproductive. It is actually right and fitting. Instead of coming to address Ugandans and you're talking of rocket science and all that, how? The other thing I wanted to make clear is it good that the Virgin Somalia is good for trade? Because somebody seems to think that Somalia, we can't trade anything. Because it was on your intervention to say, when we integrate Somalia as a case, we can trade, and somebody was doubting. To me, if you have a country which has nothing and is willing to buy, the better for us than if they we are producing milk, they are producing milk. We are producing maize, they are producing maize. We are producing matoke, they are producing the same. But the fact that they don't have, isn't that ready market for us? That is good enough for integration. So it is therefore good that we have such a situation. It sometimes is called complementarity. What you have and your friend doesn't have. So it is right and fitting that integration comes in, even for those countries that you think they have nothing to offer. To me, the mere fact that they don't have and we have is good for us. And then the issue of the Bazakuru, somebody seems to think that it is informal to address the president, to address people like his grandchildren. It's just being courteous. It's just being friendly. The biological age difference between the majority of the youth is dressing around that age bracket. Take, for example, in a real case, Muozi Kainerugaba has children, or even daughter, the wife of the lawyer, my land friend, I was with him in law school, Karujire. The children of Karujire are in this age bracket. So to be courteous, to be friendly, to draw the people closer, it is why the president chooses to use, it's a good diction, a good choice of words, a good diction, a good choice of words to bring people closer, in actually to honor them. It's like a Mutoro calling somebody with Mpako. It's like calling someone to honor them, to respect them, bring them closer, because the biological sense is the majority of these people are in the age of the Karujiri children, or even Moses' children. So I do not see how counterproductive it is.
Are all his addresses meant for children?
No, it slots in this to attract this particular majority class or this particular group of people. And it's just doing it in honor, in respect, in love. Now, did the president vulgarize agriculture? Now, this brings us now to this issue. The president, when he talked about agriculture, is that he is saying, and by the way, even in those countries you are talking about, that US produces, Canada produces, have you ever bothered to know the percentage of people in agriculture in those countries? About 5% is feeding 95% of the population. This is the plain truth. very, very few people in America can actually feed the whole world. So the president is saying,
what in the 40 years,
the
if you don't mind,
the president
what has
is
stopped him in
saying,
the last 40 years to transform agriculture in such a manner that we have that proportion and percentage per se?
thank you for your question. But what the president was saying, rather than vulgarize, was that we can use, and he illustrated it by giving tractors, that if we give people tractors to produce, the figure is here. You remember? The number of tractors that can be used can
Has he
actually
given?
produce.
Or is still
Where are
talking-
those tractors?
It can
that
Still
we are
produce-
talking in
using?
theory.
It can produce what? Enough for the
I've not seen
people.
any in Nagongera.
After
Okay.
38 years, he's still
So
talking in
therefore,
theory.
he is saying,
I think the figure is about 30,000 tractors.
yeah, 30,000 tractors. And this is precisely what happens in agriculture
So they
all
are
over the
coming.
world.
They are coming
All
next
over
year.
the world, the agriculture in those countries you are mentioning is run by very few people. And the few people are the ones who feed the entire population. So the president is saying, by involving people in the rudimentary agriculture, you are actually, he call it a disguised unemployment. You think you are unemployed when you are not. So he's saying we would move as a country to have modern agriculture, but the population shift them to what he says, service industry, in industry per se, leave alone service industry, and that he mentioned. So he was not vulgarizing agriculture. In other words, he's just looking at agriculture in the lenses of those developed countries you have quoted.
Maybe briefly, if I engage on that one, Major, in his own words, he says, you Ugandans, what are you doing in agriculture? What does that have to mean from the president of the country?
But I already said that it is, in other words, you know, he has always, personally, Museveni has tried to develop agriculture right from his days of our great entire school. For example, he tried to mobilize the people from nomadism, away from nomadism.
In Benjamin's farm.
He has been campaigning for this. Then what he's actually saying is his long-standing campaign against and modernized agriculture. So he's saying, fellow citizens, right from my high school, I've been campaigning this. Don't go into this, what you think you're doing agriculture when it is actual disguised unemployment. Okay? And you think happy about it. You have these cows, you're moving from place to place. He had been campaigning right from entire school. So it is that same tone that is saying, if you continue to have this agriculture, in other words, he's shouting out loud, crying out loud, that please, we need to do it differently. And he's saying, not only am I telling you today, but I've been telling you again and again since I left high school. And he says, those who have heard his views have succeeded. And he has data to that. Those who have heard what he has said. So his talk about agriculture is a long-standing campaign of decampaigning bad methods of agriculture. And he proposes an alternative. Okay? So that is agriculture. What else did he talk about? The service industry.
Services, ICT.
Yes, service industry is really that developing. By the way, to show the development in how much the economy has gone, there's an old man who once went to town. And when he went to town, what surprised him was the signpost. There are so many signposts. He said, in the past, we used not to have. I said, you used not to have because those services were not there and therefore had no provision for adverts. Okay? What were they advertising? Congress. I can take you through this. Congress, I can take you through this. And you can, please, take this. When the economy, for example, I can even take you a little downer. Before the economy was liberalized under IMF World Bank, where you could say, for want of better words, quasi-social system, where this was for government, this was government, what would you advertise? The concept of advertising Congress came when the economy was liberal, when it went private, and that is when now private initiative, private intervention came in, and that is when you had to show what you're selling. Before that, there wasn't.
For me, I agree with
There
you.
wasn't. Please clap for me.
I agree with you.
So this is now the service sector. And the service sector, we're doing it by legal profession, medical. You are very well aware that even if you walk on this road alone, you will see clinics and hospitals. Okay? Government provides what it can, but it doesn't prevent other private initiatives to come in. You have schools, you have whatever,
Shops.
legal services, okay? You have ICT. All these are in place. So that is what the president is saying, and is telling us that is the way to go. And he provides, even by the way, even where there's need for budgetary provision, it is provided for. Only that in this speech, it was too short for him to make such provisions. But such provisions are there in budgetary support and even in legal infrastructure system, laws that should support and guard it.
Thank you, Major. When you say services and you talk about education, you talk about private health care, you talk about hotels and tourism, you are talking about Ugandans who the president says are in agriculture, in disguised unemployment, therefore they don't have money to take on these services.
So are you saying that if I say they are there, then you are implying that I'm saying the services are run by Congolese or what? These services are there and more are yet to be put. So that is why he's saying that those who are there, that is the way to go. So those who are going to be in agriculture should be specific people with modern system. The others can go. If it is service industry, let them go. It's not that because they're there, then it is saturated, it is flooded. Even other industries are there. Service industry here is meant to juxtapose with the hard industry of material production, not service production.
Thank you, Major. And what you present seems not to...
Today you give him enough time. So that's
Yeah.
we are waiting.
Sorry,
Thank you, Major, for that clarification. But you see, in this country, when you talk about things that are happening in the right way from government, you have everyone from politicians, from people from civil society, from the academia, saying otherwise. The three people here represent really big and important sections of this population. Why do they not agree with what you say?
Well, that takes us to a very philosophical position. You're actually asking about consciousness. Why does somebody think the way somebody is thinking? And you need to interrogate this on a personal basis. But overarching provision is Congress is a party person. He is an academic. She is in the civil society. What happens is all of us have a right to think the way we want. But if you want to market your policy, then time comes when we're all given the platform to do that. For us as NRM, we chose to market it in our manifesto. Congress had the opportunity to do that. So the consciousness of why Congress thinks the way it's thinking, it is well asserted that consciousness is a materiality. So you need to interrogate where does its material interest come from to form the opinion is giving. And similarly to all of us. So the way we think is informed as a consciousness with a source of materiality. So we need to interrogate why they think that way. But nevertheless, if that is what they think and they don't agree, do we live in an anarchy? Congress compiles it into a manifesto, takes to the people. We compile ours into a manifesto, we take to the people. We market it, and people choose. And in any case, to me, I don't even take offense that other parties or other members don't agree with us. What is wrong with that? It's healthy. The only thing is that it not only healthy per se, but it keeps us in check to see whether the policy we think is right is moving on well. I don't really pray that we come here and we agree. Not at all. And that is why even it is embedded in the Constitution. So your question about why they think the way they are thinking or why they oppose, their consciousness is informed, but the materiality
Phillip,
that
we're
surrounds
moving
them.
off the road. And I think
No, but the question is,
Congress
why
and
are you
NRM
opposing it?
Congress and NRM, for us who are watching from aside, you are one and the same thing.
I
No,
reject,
but
I reject that
But
view.
the question is, why? He asked all of you, why is it all of you don't agree? So my question is, that is a matter of consciousness, and consciousness is formed by the materiality surrounding the person owning the consciousness.
I think we need to focus
Retired,
on that topic. Yeah.
retired Major Awich, thank you so much for that, and thank you so much, colleagues. We're heading into a very short break, and we shall be right back.
National Water and Sewage Corporation is committed to providing cost-effective, clean, safe and reliable quality water and sewage solutions in urban centers across Uganda. National Water and Sewage Corporation reaffirms its commitment to 100% service coverage, geographical expansion, infrastructure development, water quality, pro-poor initiatives, customer care and stakeholder engagement, catchment and water source protection. Be a water hero. Pay your bills to zero balance. Report all leaks, busts, and illegal water connections to enable us serve you better. Reach us through our toll-free numbers on 0800 200 977 or 0800 300 977. You can also communicate with us through any of our online platforms or visit the National Water and Sewage Corporation office nearest to you. This message is brought to you by National Water and Sewage Corporation.
You are still on Uganda's leading freedom platform, the Civic Space TV, and this is the Citizens Church. I'm Phillip Muliisa. Today we are looking at the presidential end of year address, and helping us understand the details of it and what it means for the country is retired Major Awich Pollar from the NRM, Honorable Joseph Ochieno from the UPC, Dr. Robert Ojambo from Kyambogo University, and Dr. Sarah Bireete from the Center for Constitutional Governance. In this second segment of the show, I want to start with you, Dr. Ojambo. The president spoke about security, and we know through the festive season we had a couple of dirty images of insecurity in the country. On the 25th, allegedly the ADF attacked Kamwenge and killed 3 people. On the 26th, they attacked in Kasese, and a couple of other things that have happened in the country. Is the president sure about the security of Ugandans?
One of the things that had earned President Museveni's stardom was his ability to organize a country which had almost gone into a state of failure, because by 1986 Uganda was a failed state. That one, whether you were young or old, there was a failed state, although he was also one of the causes of the problems. In the early time of Yoweri Museveni, from 86 to 90s, the president had done very well. UPDF was one of the, and still is, one of the disciplined army in African continent. But the coming of popular elections caused the problems. That has been my analysis. The President Museveni feared to involve UPDF into the rigging of votes for a very long time. It's something he knew, and I think he doesn't like it. Doesn't like it, and he knows that Ugandans don't like it. So President Museveni passed his buck and introduced militia into elections. Kakoza Mutale and those groups. As I speak now, every politician has a militia, has some chifesi group which helps him or her to win an election, including the president himself. Because people cane others in election, then when you ask the police says, we don't know those people. So they are militia, they are people who are not understood. So in my view, that has been the biggest source of insecurity. So much so that the Uganda police is no longer in charge of so many things. Uganda police can put on uniform, direct traffic light, people driving, and arrest petty thieves. But when it comes into real issues, the army must be called into policing, which I have always criticized. So because of that, the president does not even trust the army that he presides over. That's why he created a CFC, an army into another army. to protect him and his family. And CFC is one of the now the most powerful.
SFC.
Yes, SFC.
And there are people,
SFC.
they choose also other
It's
VIPs
now one
to
of the
protect.
powerful unit in the army. It does a lot of things. It was also blamed in this disappearance of people and so on. Because of that, the president now does not know which group to deal with. Do you deal with the UPDF? Do you deal with the CFC? SFC? Do you deal with the militia groups under Kifesi groups like Sobi, may his soul rest wherever it went, and many others? So it is a ball game. I can give you an example. These days when you have a land matter and you call the DPC, you're a local person. The DPC is going to tell you, I don't have a vehicle, I don't have this, because DPCs are given a budget of 900,000 per month to run a district, however big it is, however small it is. So what DPCs have done is to attach themselves to powerful people who give them fuel, who give them facilitation. So when I call and the other big man calls, the other big man will be dealt with first before they come to me. So that's how you look at security. So these issues you are seeing of Congo, of what, are just to blind us to think that there is something being done. Because let me tell you, peace or security does not mean absence of war. People have issues that are really affecting them. People are bitter with each other. Why are guys shooting each other on the road? There have been shootouts. At least last year was not so nasty. But before last year, there were a lot of shootouts. Have you seen any group of people that they have presented to a court of law successfully and convicted that this is the person who killed Kawesi? This is the person who killed Chigundu. This is the person who killed, there's Major Chigundu and the other one, I've forgotten his name. The other one who was from ADF returning.
Jamil.
No, there's another one they killed, I forget him, and many others. So that shows you that there are groups that are very, very powerful. So for me, I am seeing Uganda that the only thing holding the pin is Yoweri Museveni himself. Without him, these groups are going to backfire, and insecurity is going to come back the way it was. So the only pin holding the bomb from blasting is Museveni himself. And why? They have created these problems themselves. Because I do some little study in security. So I am looking at this from that perspective, that the president himself has weakened the army and the security that is created because of because in Uganda it is very difficult to win an election without any Chifesi group or a militia group helping you, or RDC. You have seen the RDCs are a big force in determining who wins an election where. And you know, RDC is the chairman of security in a district. That person is supposed to be non-partisan. In this country, they are partisan. Look at DPCs. DPCs are supposed to monitor law and order. But you find them participating in political enforcers. They are the ones protecting land grabbers. They are the ones doing all sorts of bad things. It means somewhere the holders left it loose. Look at the other issue now is international. International security. I want to give the president a credit here. We have continued, because Uganda, if we were not the way we are, we have created a lot of enemies, and therefore it would be very easy. We are in a very versatile situation where we are surrounded by Congo, surrounded by Sudan, surrounded by many countries which are very, very hostile. I don't think Tanzania is, and others, but those would have been a very big problem. So we have tried to manage our borders and the security from Karuma, from Busia to Nimule. At least there is some security. The elephant in the house is this ADF. That one has remained elusive, and we need to interrogate and find out, what is this ADF thing? Is it a pond being used to protect the queen or the king on a chessboard? Is it real? Because sometimes you even see at the periods when certain things happen. When we want to go to Congo, the month we want to go to Congo, there are bomb blasts in Kampala. And we use them as a justification to go to Congo. When we try to come out of Congo, that's when people cross to Kasese, Kamwenge, and many of these places and cause mayhem. Why? Is it a coincidence? Is it an accident? Is it? So we need to plan. Number 3, we need to evaluate our relationships with the M23. Because for those who know, there is M23 Uganda and M23 Rwanda. And the two have created a lot of problems. M23 Rwanda seems to be very powerful, and that's why Tshisekedi is really bitter with Rwanda. He thinks it is Kagame keeping M23 there. The ones of Uganda have fizzled out, disappeared, and now we have gone there to fight ADF. By the way, we went there before even the East African community called us to go there. So I don't know whether we even withdrew with the East African community. I'm not yet very sure because I'm not a military man until maybe we see. So the ADF is a very big issue which needs to be looked at politically, in my view. It has now ceased to be a security matter. It needs to be looked at politically. And we understand, what are these ADFs? Do they need to be talked to? Can they be given positions in government like we gave to people of West Nile Bank, like we gave to people of LRA? Because LRA is one of the most horrendous rebel group that has ever been in Uganda. But we have people in LRA who are now serving in government. They were in LRA. Some are generals, some are what? Some are big officers. Can we also look at this ADF and find out whether they have any political agenda so that we start dealing with them politically? Because for how long are we going to fight with the ADF and not finish it? Because militarily we have failed. Anybody who still believes that we can fight ADF militarily and smash them out, we have failed. It's just like corruption. We have failed. So we need to look at it politically, in my view.
Thank you so much.
Just to finish, in the speech, the president gives it, as she said, just gives it like a narrative. These ones, we shall crush them. We are going, it is not easy. We are losing a lot of money, a lot of equipment. I was just seeing how many helicopters we have lost, and the ones who have been declared, because some are not declared. If they are bombed there, they don't declare. It is kept secret for security reasons. But the ones which have just got an accident, I was counting, they were 9. How much money is that? How much money is that? How many people have we lost in Congo in pursuant of ADF? So we need a serious speech which is talking about those things and how they are going to be stopped. Not just saying they are going to be crushed. Crushing them, are they granates? They're not granates.
Thank you. I want to engage you, Major Awich, on this one because it has a lot of military in it. The ADF, in the wording of the president, he keeps saying, these pigs we have defeated and the remaining few we are defeating in a few days or weeks. But they keep killing Ugandans. 3 Ugandans killed on 25th.
There's a time they told us
Others
that
killed.
it remained only 3.
Yes. What is it that is keeping these pigs killing Ugandans? Is it time we talk to them?
Thank you so much. I just like to comment about your opening statement where when we are opening this segment, and I think this goes well to our viewers in Canada and America and everywhere. You said you welcome us to the leading freedom chat room. The operative words here is leading and freedom. And I'm very happy with that because that shows that in Uganda, we have freedom. The only issue now is competing. Which one is the freest? So I like to make that comment. So guys, there, we are in the leading freedom chat room. But that is to say the other chat rooms which are free in Uganda. Now, about ADF, the finishing and then the peace talks there too. Normally, in a war which is non-conventional, where you are competing for territories, it's difficult to declare that you have won or defeated your opponent. No conventional war, as opposed to guerrilla war, is that the conventional war, in the traditional sense of the convention, if you take this territory, you even put your flag and say, my flag is here, I've defeated you from here, and this is my territory. If you advance the next 5 kilometers, you put your flag. The next 10 kilometers, you put your flag. That is the conventional war, where the front lines are known and demarcated. But in a guerrilla warfare, it's not the case. Anybody can still perform an act that makes it either difficult to assess or even to assess the capacity of the rebellion, or even to make you think you have finished them. So that is the nature that we are in. We are not in a conventional war, so we are yet to see. You only determine by the long-lasting capacity to attack. But I would like to say the difference between a conventional warfare where you win and it is known, and guerrilla is here the thin line is difficult. So we shall continue like that until we shall see the end. Now, about peace talks. Peace talks, Museveni is a very peace-minding person. I remember in West Nile there was a peace talks of Major General who became Major General, but there was a West Nile bank front in a Jumani, in a Yombe. There was a war, and these guys were fighting that side and going into Sudan for a long time, and there was no peace in that area. So a similar idea was hatched about peace. And when the negotiation started, headed by Kategaya, the rebels said they could not discuss. Reason that they have been out of Uganda, so they don't know what is there. So how can they discuss? So President Museveni said, we shall drop for you 2 cadres to teach you what is in Uganda, and then you can come back to peace talks if you so wish. Now, these 2 cadres were dropped in the rebel. They devised their own syllabus telling them constitution, local government, what has happened, all this and all this. And they finally said, okay, now we know, let's go back to the peace talks. They are the peace talks, and the commander, who was Bamoze was promoted from sergeant to Major General, and there was peace up to now. And guess who the 2 cadres were? You was talking, and the person who later became acting IGG, or the guy from West Nile, or Bako. We were airlifted and dropped among rebels. And if the rebels show wish to slaughter us, they would have slaughtered us. But we talked, we drew a syllabus, because their point was, how do we talk when we don't know what is in Uganda? He said, fine, let's sit together, let's discuss. We have word the constitution when you're in the bush. The constitution says A, B, C, D. We have also whole government, local government, decentralization. It is, and whatever we thought. And thanks God, they said, now we know, let's go back to the peace talks. So I'm saying this because I had the first hand as an actor in a peace talks process. And I'm using this to illustrate, therefore, that President Museveni is open to peace talks. But the circumstance under which we are now in, I can't now say, but as a general rule, he is open to it. That's why we tried even coin. That's why we tried coin. So, peace talks, for the moment, is good for Museveni to answer. But I know he's an open-minded person, and we have history and examples to attest to attempted peace talks, others successful, like the one I participated in. And by the way, we did it one time under a World Cup. You know, World Cup football takes a whole month. I never watched even one because I was in the bush with rebels.
We feel your pain, Major. But I want to engage Dr. Sarr on this one. One of the issues that I've covered 2023 is the boycott of parliament by opposition members of parliament. And the issue was justice for the 56 people that were killed in the riots, but also the 18 missing persons. And the president literally did not address this issue as he talked to the country in the end of the address. But many other people keep dying. ADF in Kasese, in Kamwenge, the students that died at Lubiriha Secondary School, and many others. When and how do these people get justice?
You know, like Dr. Ojambo has said, really, NRM has been bragging a lot for bringing security in the country. And even a section of population used to say that, you know, the Twebakatulo slogan, at least we can sleep, let Museveni be in power. I want to start from the question of ADF. The president, before the New Year address, had made a short address on ADF where he said he wanted to recruit LDU militia to fight ADF. And my question was, where is the mighty army? Why do we need to recruit a militia to train for 6 months minimum to fight a terror group that is busy killing people? Because so far, from the attacks at Impondo in a school in Kasese up to now, 57 people have been killed by ADF. This is approximately 3 months. You have a terror group busy killing people. You have an army of a country, but you want to recruit a militia to fight a terror group. I found that really, I don't know what is happening with the presidency as an ordinary citizen, really. Because where is the UPDF? But we can try to map out here briefly where UPDF is busy engaged. UPDF is busy doing police work in this country. Yet the constitution that is clauses of the constitution that establish UPDF are distinct from those of police, as well as the mandate. But we have UPDF in police. Even those that are not in police officially are busy policing people, including kidnaps. If you see any land grabbing scuffle on TV, there is UPDF. If you see the people grazing on actual lands illegally, there is UPDF. If you discuss kidnaps, the issue of missing persons, the name of UPDF will feature. If you cross borders and go to South Sudan, UPDF will feature. Officially, we are still putting out of Somalia, but we are also in Equatorial Guinea, guarding an aging dictator there, and so on. So what is the value of UPDF to Uganda if they cannot fight ADF? We also have UPDF in trying to withdraw from DRC. I thought since the areas are interconnected and the terrain is the same, we should just get to the UPDF that is in DRC trying to withdraw, including that of Operation Suja, and deploy it in Kasese and Chagara. Secondly, recruiting a militia to fight terrorists is unconstitutional. It's unconstitutional. A militia is supposed to help keep There is no law establishing LDU. But we know that currently the government is using LDU to recruit for SFC. The high-performing LDU people are given ranks of the army without following the formal recruitment of the army. So there is that forgery. So I think as a citizen, I want an accountability as to why UPDF cannot fight ADF in Western, Southwestern Uganda, and why we need to recruit a militia, a ragtag militia, half-baked 6 months, to take it to guard Ugandans with their property. But on the question that you asked, I had already said that the president takes on to TVs and radio stations to engage in an informal conversation. Even his speeches are not structured. Maybe it's the chat show needs to help him. Maybe we put him on a panel to help him give a structured address. So his address is supposed to be an annual accountability, but it is neither here nor there. It's just an informal conversation. The question of human rights is still key on our agenda. I heard his speech when he was addressing the Commonwealth speakers opening their conference, and he says we should all respect the freedoms of other people amidst our diversity. That is the list that the president talks on the question of human rights. He does not talk of the abuses he's presiding over as the commander-in-chief of the defense forces. He does not talk about misconduct of the UPDF, which is meant to benefit him politically by harassing opposition. He does not talk about the excesses of all agencies, including URA that shot 4 people in West Nile, URA enforcement sector. So everything that involves a gun in this country is a disaster for the people.
Thank you, Doctor. And indeed, we should invite the president to the chat show. But Honorable Joseph, I want to say the question of security and life is so important, and I stick to it. The word militia has been used so much on the show today, and we know, for example, when you go to Sudan, the Khartoum, Sudan, we know what came as a militia through President Bashir and the Janjaweed crisis in Darfur, what became the RSF headed by General Dagalo is doing in Sudan today. We know what became the end of the Wagner in Russia. How are we going to manage this militia being talked about in the country?
The militia, by nuances, Sarah is telling you that Museveni is justifying a continued operation to personalize this republic, and that in a very sophisticated way, and unfortunately for Ugandans, but for him, fortunately, that is able to do that, and Ugandans continue to get hoodwinked in the club, meaning that it's really not about anything except an enhancement of his personal army, which is basically NRA, the military establishment army. So it's neither here nor there. In fact, Sarah's reaction is just the same as mine. But as I said, these days, I want to save myself from stress because I also want to live, to reach Museveni's age and more. So sometimes some of the things that you see and just, is it fake news as this the day today? To imagine that under Museveni, under this Museveni's NRA regime, you're beginning to talk about recruiting a militia, one. And then two, as Sarah suggests, to say that you're recruiting a militia under this NRA regime military kind of stuff, that's talked about the power of the military. And to now say you're recruiting a militia to go and fight terror. And yet for me, I have always said continuously, again and again and again and again, just like Comrade Awich was saying, conventional army, you have fronts, and you've got locations, you've got territory. And conventional army, except for them, the NRA guys who occupy a particular part of Luweero, they could come, throw bombs in Taxi Park, throw bombs in Crescent House, throw bombs in Kamocha, throw bombs at the end of NRA, meaning Museveni. They did it. Point is, this NRA is the expert military, to fight ideally against terror. So you would expect a few guys who came from the bushes with their experiences, those early ones who came to terrorize Kampala during the Ochieno times, those ones who then took over Kampala post-1986, which I completely not necessarily agree with from what Robert says. I was old enough to have been around Kampala to see what, and I'll explain that before. It's actually genuinely very disappointing. Good enough we're discussing Museveni's speech and New Year. But actually, it's very unfortunate for this country that the first week of January, we are talking about a militia report from the president as a guarantee, Mr. Museveni, as a guarantee for our security to gun protect us against rebels. It tells you how much shambolic this system is. But that said, I just want to express my protest that earlier you suggested that our submissions at the beginning of this conversation was being biased against Mr. Museveni. For me, I'm the president of Uganda People's Congress, number one. Number two, I am a seasoned commentator. And number two, I'm reasonably scholarly. So we come to this program as a responsible citizens to critique, in this case, a speech by a guy who has ruled this country at my expense and the expense of my family and all the citizens of this country who belong to us as Uganda People's Congress. So Museveni makes a speech. It's our job as citizens. And by the way, Ugandans, you don't actually not necessarily be to be a scholar or political leader. We critique. So to critique those is not about making biases. Thankfully, there is nothing Sarah, Robert, and I have said and would say. And there is nowhere I go on national television, including global television, there's nowhere where I have ever said anything about this crude record of NRA, which can be challenged by Mr. Museveni. That's why I've also requested on a number of other programs that I wish one day in my lifetime I'll have an opportunity to sit with Museveni on a panel like this to discuss Uganda's true record, and I'll be very happy to begin to discuss from his reigning days of Ndare School in 1966. He claims that's when he started teaching about progressive farming to date, because I know I will hit him on facts and evidence. So that's the thing. But look, I think that Robert, it is true that Museveni on January 1986, January 26th, the NRA guys, when they took over Kampala, 25th in fact,
they just postponed the declaration.
Kampala was a mess. Kampala was a mess, and Kampala had been a mess for 6 months, 7 months.
Sure.
From July 25th, 26th, 25th or thereabout, 1985, between July 1985 and really, you can say about the 1982 thereabout. No, we had a normal state. We had a normal state, notwithstanding the fact that the NRA bandits were terrorizing Luwero and terrorizing Kampala. 9 years post Idi Amin, because it's a statement I have to make, 9 years post Idi Amin, the UPC government tried to reorganize Uganda. We restored educational system, we restored health system, we restored infrastructure, we restored every aspect of our national economy. The mess that happened in July 1985, and must be said for the record, the 1985 coup was a deal between Museveni, DP, a certain cleric establishment, using particular individuals in UPC as a deal which failed, And from then on, Museveni refuses to come to Kampala, subjects these guys to crude war. The Laras would know a very interesting story, And between that, it is true Kampala now ended up a state with a militia state, really, kind of stuff. So that is the messy Kampala. But up to 1985 July, Uganda was a sensible state. And I want to challenge, Phillip, you're a young guy. Gun check from independence. Any speech made by Milton Obote, former state speech, global speech, visiting a school, a party, or a wedding, it will be a speech, including actually political rallies. If there will be speeches called political rallies, will have nuances where you want to hit at the opponents, things like that. There will be speeches made by the president. And for the record, I joined Uganda People's Congress actually in 1980. as a result of Milton Obote's visit to me. In that, because since we are suggesting that we'll advise Mr. Museveni on how to make speeches, Obote's speech was after Museveni came and visited Miri, and I cut him off completely. Museveni was teaching us where cow dung comes from. He was literally showing it to us. You know, this is dung here, this is dung here. That's one of the reasons why he really lost it in Miri. Semugere's losing speech was when he said his wife holds a PhD in economics. And students were saying, well, are we going to elect this guy a leader or his wife? Obote came, and for me, and particularly a number of other students in Miri was predominantly, of course, an OB school, and generally, possibly 60% UPC. But the day Obote came, it was possibly 90%. Why? Students said, so did I. Obote spoke to our teachers, spoke to our parents, spoke to the farmers, spoke to the cooks, spoke to our students, spoke to the country, and spoke globally. Now, that as a leader is what we expect, and that was merely a presidential candidate. And we simply said, look, this is the sort of guy we want. I embraced Uganda performance with Milton. Fast forward, we cannot, and maybe we're spending a lot of time on it, but we're spending a lot of time because we are under siege by Mr. Museveni. A presidential speech, and I'm lucky again to have been with Milton Obote, Sarah, even in a formal dining room, maybe in this case, possibly in his bedroom. I tell people that even a few individuals who've been unlucky that Obote reported them to me or talked to me, extremely careful. I also have it on the record that part of his instruction in his home, you don't speak another language because of the United Republic of Uganda. So you don't, that is testament. Of course, that's Milton Obote is gone. But maybe you can see some of the things that we rub from here, and maybe some of our expectations. So for my expectations of a leader, it does not have to be Obote. But surely it should not be a patronizing speech about Bazukulu. Patronizing leader about Bazukulu, a patronizing speech where you killed our agriculture, you killed our infrastructure, killed our schools, killed our hospitals. Final point on this. It's very shocking, and Robert, you're nearly buying into this. The point that my comrade here was trying to suggest that, because now there are many shops, there are many pharmacies. Do you know what? It's absolutely manifestation of a total failure. And you, the youth of this country, I hope you rise up in the year 2024 to wake up to the reality that this man has privatized the Republic of Uganda and outsourced governance. By doing what? By creating a situation in which there are pharmacies every street, but there are no drugs and hospitals. By creating schools in every corner and universities in every part of Kampala, but there are no functioning educational systems in this country. Education, health, infrastructure, agriculture, core elements, industry and technology, these are things that national central governments ought to be able to lead on. Now, even on the questions of employment, where he talks about actually hidden employment, he actually didn't know that he was contradicting himself. It's the responsibility of central government to come and give us evidence of jobs created, evidence of alternative employment. He did not. So really the speech was actually one of the most disappointing of any of the speeches. And since we are here starting the new year, I actually genuinely hope Mr. Museveni improves. But it is not going to be about Mr. Museveni. I don't expect anything from this man. The only thing I hope and pray for is that this guy retires soon. And so there is a hope for a new possibility, for a new leader, so that the young people like yourselves and my beautiful camera lady and your program director at least can begin to have hope and begin to see things differently. Because in Uganda, to level it up to Museveni, we basically need to begin to believe in better, because better in this country is possible. There was better before Museveni came. 40 years later, it sunk us down. Better is possible for the future.
Thank you, Honorable Joseph Ochieno. Major, and I want to put a direct question to you. You are Major Awich, Major of the Uganda People's Defense Forces. Why do we need a different force other than the Uganda People's Defense Forces to fight ADF in Western Uganda?
I was questioning myself that to discuss this, I first needed to know the information that forms or informs our opinion that the president or UPDF has said it's recruiting. I may not have come across that information, but I don't know. I first want to know Did the president or you have it there, say we are recruiting militia? If that is ascertained, therefore, we have recruited militia before. The militias that we have was the Arrow Group in Teso, the Amuha in Lango, and another group in Acholi. We had those militias during those wars. Normally, military strategies are very detailed, professional decision taken. And by the way, thank you, PDF. Many of these, at least from the rank of colonel and above, these guys have done to all the military colleges in the world. Staff college, staff and command, senior command, everywhere, war college, they have done it. PDF have done well. So, to make a decision like in TESA, to involve an Harrow group, is normally not an easy decision to be taken. Normally what happens is, not all that I'm mentioning, but first of all, the demand that the people always say, like in Acholi, Teso and Lango, that we are being attacked. We are like women or like children. Why can't we demand them? It takes a long time for such demand to come up. Secondly, sometimes the nature of the enemy, like in the areas I've mentioned, you find like rebels move in a village like 2 or 3 and they terrorize the whole village. So these decisions are always taken by the fact that in village X, 3 came. In village Y, 2 came. In village Z. So the people always say, now, if this is the nature they are moving, then you let us be armed. So, in other words, decisions that are taken to involve militias, and that's why I'm restricting myself to areas that has been done, because I have no evidence about the one in issue, the one you're talking about.
It was, just for information, the president stated that in his brief address on 28th of December on Twitter. Dear Bazukulu gave history of Muslims and how we've been living in harmony, Muslims in Tungamo, and of course the killings, and then said he's going to recruit 600 LDUs.
Yes. So normally a decision on whether or not to recruit LDU, especially in the areas that I'm talking about, is always determined or informed by first the demand of the local people, because the local people sometimes want to be involved in the security of their areas. Some demands you can outrule them, some demands you can accept them. 2, it depends on the nature of the enemy there. The people may say, but in our village only 2 came and harassed us. Why don't you train us? Why don't you arm us? We can protect ourselves. So, the decision, therefore, is determined by very serious and conscious military decision.
Major, briefly.
And armed with intelligence information.
Yes, thank you. But in the recent past, we've seen what such a group has done to Sudan. The Rapid Support Forces, Khartoum today is in flames. What guarantee do we have as Ugandans that these will not turn out to be our enemies in the near future?
I think we have guarantee. You see, if you look at the Sudanese case, I think they really were not acting as statespeople. For example, the militia in Sudan, you'd have a militia like Harrow Boys attacking UPDF. How? So that is what used to happen in Sudan. What used to happen in Sudan is that the basis was that the president formed them to balance himself from the military. He feared that the military would overthrow, so he recruited this one. Can you imagine the militias in Sudan were attacking government forces? Now, for us here, and I say with certainty, first the deployment of command. When you form such a group, the command structure are by UPDF. 2, actually before that, the law governing the rules and conduct is that these guys are subjected to court martial. 3, the political commissars. The political commissars are always first deployment officers. Political commissars are actually checks and balances. While you think you are looking at the enemy, the political commissars is looking at the non-revolutionary attitudes in the army, the wrongs. So the political commissars are more internal looking to check the rot. So PCs are deployed. of course, intelligence, and then the logistics. So once you have the command and subject them to the court martial, then you have no problem. And they're properly under the command of the army. The Sudan one was separate. I studied that thing in Sudan. I was embarrassed. To the extent, I can't imagine in Soroti, a Haro group in this village going to attack the UPDF in the other village. That's what was happening. That would mean, therefore, the commander of that Haro group, who is UPDF, is actually commanding the Haro group to attack the other UPDF, which can't happen.
Major
So I
General
can assure
Hamdan
you,
Dagalo is in the Sudanese armed forces.
Come
He's
again?
a Major General, the head of RSF.
that man was promoted from there. That major general
Maybe Philip,
was promoted
Philip,
from there.
to just give major information that what we are discussing is not just hearsay from her. This is an established thing which the UPDF spokesperson, Brigadier Felix Kulaije, announced on December 26th that they were going to recruit LODUs mandated by President Museveni to phase out. And already phase one has started in the districts of Kamwenge, Chitagwenda, Bunyangabo, Chenjojo, and Kasese. This is phase one.
Fine.
They are targeting 700 of them.
Fine, I'd
730.
ask to be sure about the facts I'm talking about. But I had said, be as it is, I went through the facts that inform involvement of militia. And I think I've come to your question to avoid. But the Sudan man was a civilian just promoted by himself or what to Major General. It wasn't an institutional command structure. Like we have recruited 700 LDUs. We have divided them, let's say, into companies. One company, every company of 100 UPDF commander. We are dividing each company into 3 platoons. Every platoon, UPDF commander. And in this company, we have a political commissar. If it is a battalion, we have a battalion political commissar. And you are subjected under the rules and laws. That is what happens, and we can't have any problem with that.
But Philip, just to give you more information, this has not happened only in UPDF. Even Uganda police, and this was started during the time of Kale Kaihura as the IGP. When we were recruiting, at first we had the people called special police constables. Then later we had another group until we reached a time when we were recruiting Kifesi. That's how people like
Crime
that's how,
preventers.
there was crime preventers. Then later,
Border
then
2010.
2010. Then later we had the Kifesi. Because for me, I had no imagination that sometimes you would see people like Sobi in public. They pull out pistols and they say they are security
under
agents.
deployment.
And they say they are under deployment. And they have turned out to be a very big group. In fact, this man of Boda 2010 almost was arrested. But for me, I thought that it was just dealing with the symptom of a disease that they created themselves. The man had a golden pistol and was running a security militia in police and so many other things. So Major seems to be undermining this thing and saying it is not as serious as it is.
No, he's a diplomat.
The failure of police right now, why police has become a laughable thing, is because of special police constables, crime preventers, people who did not go to Boda 2010, Kifesi group, and so many others. So we have now Kifesi policemen. And if you are dealing with a Kifesi policeman, a man who used to turn people's necks, now is the one supposed to protect them, you are in trouble. That's why we have policemen who are doing all sorts of things. So for me, I think, in my view, by the way, somebody should not understand me. I'm the one who brought this idea of militia. LDU, what have you, at least a little bit okay. But there are people who are recruited without people knowing. For example, when they killed this Zebra Senyange, the one who was a boxer, the president shocked the whole country that one was working with us.
To
As
fight
who?
people.
Because for me, I knew Zebra was just a boxer, a captain of Uganda Bombers one time, who was a sportsman. How did he come to work with the government as a security person to a level that if he wants to be eliminated, he's eliminated by security operatives. Why? So, and many of them, this man who was killed in this place. So there are those characters who are in government serving on security platforms, and yet they are not established. Does it mean that I should also leave the country because I have money, I start my group and they start protecting me? So for me, I feel the president needs to come out clear on this thing so that all these things are disbanded and those who are criminals are put in, so that we know that if there is a problem, I run to police. If it is a war, UPDF is evoked. And UPDF, we need to know, where does UPDF start? And where does the other brigade of the president also come in? Sometimes you see them even fighting. In public, they are fighting.
That's another militia.
So who is commanding who? That is my problem.
Can I just say that?
Thank you. Briefly.
That is why you've just wrapped up the little credit to the dismay of anybody who wildly supports NRA, that these guys were anything better than post 1986. Because I said 7 months 1986, we had militias around Kampala. And then the bigger, stronger militia came and took over power in 1986. And let me tell you, on the basis of the record starting from Kabamba, with that attack in Kabamba, that crude attack in Kabamba, they thank J.J. Odong on it, there was nothing religious about what Museveni and his gang did in Kabamba, because they didn't kill a chicken, So starting from there, the Luwero skulls to date, Professor will help us have some research when Museveni retires. But I promised another network the other day that I want to encourage Ugandans not to seek revenge. I just want us to know the truth and heal. So starting from 1986, the Luwero skulls, them coming into power, the crudeness of the 7 months, because all of them were in Kampala. Museveni was not fully in charge, but all of them were in Kampala, because we know it, because that's how they work. From that day, I was at Makere. I saw how many students from, how many people, around Monday, I don't know, around Kampala, who just merely shout, Uno, Mucholi, and people who round them and hit. I know that happened. I myself was a direct victim of that. I don't know who arrested me, but I know there's a group of 7 or 8 people, some of them in uniform, others not. 1987, November the 2nd, I've not yet known who did that for me. The tortures that I received, the safe houses so-called that I did, I narrowly escaped to exile. And where I was being interviewed? The only open office I know in which I was ever interviewed was President's Office, 4th floor, parliamentary buildings. It's not about me, the personal thing. Luckily, I escaped. By 1987, these things had already been started happening in northern Uganda, eastern Uganda. So meaning NRA, by the way, so Robert, I don't know when NRA can say that they were peaceful. They started war in Acholi. They predominantly did whatever they did in Teso. In Teso, the Mukura massacre is still out down there. Fast forward to what Robert is talking about today, about the capacity. No, it is just because they're in charge of lead propaganda that they present themselves as the good ones. But time has come to roost. All we need to do, basically, as Ugandans, put up our hands, simply say that nobody's perfect on this. Museveni has run for too long, claiming that, he came to rescue this country. Because as far as we're starting a new nation, I don't see from his speech how anything can be said that, the guy rescued our country and is taking us anywhere. He should just basically retire. People in NRA and RM should find a way in which they're able to begin to learn how to manage NRA without Museveni. Those of us outside NRA, we are very clear in our mind that we want to be able to manage a post-Uganda Museveni, a post-Museveni Uganda, with everybody else, thankfully, including guys in NRA. And for me, I don't actually mind a possibility, that slim possibility, Sarah, that when Museveni goes off tomorrow, somebody governing Uganda, is difficult for me as head of UPC to say that. I'm not quite sure that it's necessarily that a UPC person must lead. It could even be somebody in NRA, but we just need a fresh start as a country, to make sure that we're able to heal from this thing of patronizing things for Mr. Museveni. End of year, he gives it as if he's by the fireside somewhere. I don't know where his home village is, talking to his grandchildren.
Honorable Joseph, a few days ago, journalists were meeting the president and put a question to him whether he would stand in 2026. And he did say that Ugandans should not worry about whether he stands or he doesn't stand.
Those are small issues.
Those are very small issues. Do you think the standing of President Museveni, 1, is a small issue? 2, should he stand in 2026, but also would you want to stand against him in 2026?
I'm president of Uganda People's Congress, is declared by competent authorities, and that
Court.
means, but yeah, indeed, and that means that I will present myself and our party and our programs to the country. But you know what? I actually think the thing is very big. But what really is very important for Ugandans is that Uganda should stop expecting that Museveni will do them a favor by standing aside. And I think for me, from an opposition perspective, I just hope that opposition leaders, and indeed particularly the youth of this country, should actively be seeking to find a way in which they make it difficult for Museveni to continue abusing them the way he does, and using them and basically belittling them. And then number two, to critically mobilize and organize and begin to think alternative ways in which we're able to manage the mess that is left for us in 40 years. You know, this thing about national reconciliation, national healing, a sense of building consensus together, but also maybe where we have scholars like Robert, who basically come on the basis of evidence to put NRA on the mic, put UPs on the mic in terms of, for us actually, we've got a bigger burden because we've been down there as a government, but quite clearly put it objectively, and put others on the mic, and then give younger people like you on evidence, the manner in which I picked Milton Obote in 1980, on evidence, and make sure that a leader, a thinking, a new direction, a leadership idea emerges that's able to take this country out of the mess in which Museveni will have left us.
Thank you, Honorable. Dr. Sarah, in the recent past, we've seen the opposition in this country trying to work together. We've seen General Mugisha Muntu, Dr. Besigye, the Honorable Robert Kyagulanyi on same functions, trying to speak the same language. But also, in the last few weeks, we had change of leadership in Parliament of Uganda from the opposition side. The leader of opposition changed, and a couple of other officers. Should we imagine the opposition is planning something different from how they've been playing recently, and does it create hope for Ugandans that they can counter President Museveni?
I think that, with the due respect, if the opposition were given freedom and their political rights to operate, they would offer that alternative, of course. Because what is remaining of NRM, other than capture of the pillars of the state and manipulating them to keep themselves in power? What remains of NRM?
Ideology.
We have which ideology of corruption?
C23.
The ideology, Museveni is keeping power through elaborate patronage and corruption and violence.
Yeah.
Is that the ideology? You know, I think we need to give some respect to Uganda. If you look at even the speech we are discussing, what is the state of the economy? 97 trillion public debt. We are being frozen from lending sources. Just this week, Uganda has officially dropped off the AGOA list. We are still under suspension by World Bank. We are facing China. When our airport was mortgaged, airport collections go in an on the escrow account in Exim Bank, the Chinese bank. You look at the challenges with that. Look at the degradation of institutions. We don't have a Bank of Uganda governor for 2 years. We don't have confirmation of electoral commissioners. We don't have LC elections. Now it's going into a year. We have postponed the LC elections for 1 year. Because 6 months, another 6 months, makes a year. We have failed to organize LC elections for 1 year.
In fact, they are illegal now.
Yes. We look at the hashed fuel monopoly law that we passed that we cannot service.
It's not backfiring.
And we are now endangering our, relations with the neighbor by in a rushed manner, dragging the Kenyan government to the East African court. Because what are the conditions for an importation license in Kenya? You must have a fuel trade of $10 million for consecutive 3 years. You must have a depot. You must have a supply chain.
I saw that actually, yes.
UNOC has neither of the three. We requested Kenya to give us a political waiver. Majority of fuel importers in the region are based in Kenya. Kenya's economy is on its knees. Ruto is struggling with the business community, with the judiciary, with everybody. The waiver has not come through. Under what grounds do we drag Kenya to court? I think we are going to accumulate losses in that suit. Because what is the logic? We don't meet the conditions. You don't meet the requirements. You made a law to import fuel yesterday. You don't have 10 million sales for 3 years. You don't have a distribution chain. You don't have a depot. Well, why are we in court?
Why hadn't the authorities considered? That's part of what I'm trying to say. Can you imagine, as a nation state, to take that position and nobody from government had actually given the consideration about some of those possible legal implications?
It's just the shambolic of doing things.
Thank you, Doctor. Major, briefly, how does the NRM view 2024?
Well, the view about 2024, part of the speech that is given here in this speech is intertwined in that it talks about the past and also indicate the future. So 2024, therefore, we expect to have smooth security. 2024, therefore, we shall work to have the economy in working and the livelihoods of the people are better. And 2024, we expect to, at the end of the year, thereabout financial, to come up with records of how many jobs have been created. Yes, and the like. So this speech is both the past and the future. So that is as brief.
Yes, just after the speech was given, we have witnessed the assassination of a high-profile person and attempted assassination in the early days of the year. Which security are you talking about?
Yeah, that is the security I'm talking about. No, my time really,
Okay.
because I know if a doctor says he's going to intervene, 10 minutes. So let me say this. There was a talk about, the Sarah said the president does not talk about human rights. The human rights provision now is that institutional framework. No, first the legal framework, and then the institutional framework. So if the president was to talk about human rights, it would really be endless, yes?
Unfortunately, I have to cut you short. Our time is fast
And you
spent.
always cut me.
But I've given you enough time to the Major.
This one?
You shouldn't really complain. Thank you so much, retired Major.
But as I, just this, to say, a comrade Ochieno said that NRM has lead propaganda. On the contrary, to every forum that have appeared, we have 3 people against 1. So where is the propaganda? In all TVs, we don't have. We believe in the truth.
Major Awich, thank you so much for joining us today. Honorable Joseph Ochieno, thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Robert Ojambo, thank you for joining us today. And
My pleasure.
Dr. Sarah Bireete, thank you so much for joining us today. And you, our viewers, thank you so much for keeping with us and joining us in the new year. It is the Citizens Action Civic Space TV. Remember, this is made possible by the Center for Constitutional Governance. Thank you to the people behind the cameras and my producer. And good evening, and see you next time.